Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around is my review of the 1989 French horror home invasion Christmas thriller Deadly Games, just also known as Dial Code Santa Claus or Game Over. The French title was actually 3615 Code Père Noël. Now, this is a film that for years languished in relative obscurity because of the fact that it was a movie that didn't really get much of a wide release outside of France. And it's a film that I was aware of for a while because I read some reviews of it and seen some people talk about it in terms of how it's like Home Alone meets Rambo meets a home invasion movie with horror elements. And it was a plot that always interested me. And even the photos that I saw with the kid with his mullet and his face paint, the war paint, and the gun, I was like, what the hell is this movie? I have to go see this. I have to see this movie. I have to find this thing and watch it sometime. I could never find a copy of the film with either an English dub or English subtitles. So for the longest time, I just could not watch this movie. And that ultimately came to an end when Vinegar Syndrome released their version of the film on Blu-ray and 4K, and this is one of my favorite releases from this company because not only does it have a lot of features and everything, but it has a really just stunning transfer of this movie. And this film, just after two viewings, has quickly become one of my favorite Christmas movies because this film is just so unique and interesting in terms of its visuals, in terms of the plot, that it's just one of those movies that to me is just very special in the genre. And it's one that I definitely do recommend. I think this is a film that absolutely earns its cult status. It's a movie that I hope becomes a Christmas classic for many, many years to come for a lot of people. Now, the film is directed by René Manzor, and his direction is absolutely magnificent. The film features some absolutely stunning shots that really do showcase this director's talent, and it's a damn shame that after this film, the most work he got was doing TV shows. Like, for a director who created visuals and did direction that was so dynamic and so incredible, it really is a shame that he never got a chance to do another feature film in the US. I've seen directors who are infinitely less talented get multiple chances to direct feature films, but that didn't seem to deter studios from giving them that opportunity. But with Rene Manzor, it's never got that shot for whatever reason, and it's a shame. When you watch this movie, you're like, wow, it really is one of those wow films when it comes to the direction. He uses his angles brilliantly. He uses his technique in a terrific fashion. There are shots where he will even do overhead shots and pans and zooms and just ways that are just very creative and very impressive when it comes to the technique. Yeah, I cannot sing his praises enough. The direction in this is a definite highlight and is a big reason why the film works as well as it does. And he also wrote it. So he wrote and directed this movie. And the script is pretty good too. It's a nice twist on a home invasion thriller. It being listed as a horror film, it kind of does fit in some scenes where the crazy psycho dressed as Santa is trying to get the kid and his grandfather when they're in the car in the garage trying to get the car to start. And there are a few other moments where the Santa is stalking the kid, where you could definitely see it being something out of the horror genre, but it's not really a body count film. It's not a slasher movie, and there's no supernatural stuff, and there's not. It's really more of a home invasion thriller with elements of Home Alone, which I know Home Alone was actually a film that came out after this, and I know René Manzor threatened legal action towards the writers of Home Alone for ripping off his movie. And I know that's been kind of a popular sort of thing where people will try to say that Home Alone ripped off Deadly Games. But if you watch the two films, they're very different. The only thing similar is that you have a kid who's resourceful and uses traps. That's it. Other than that, the tone is dramatically different, and a lot of the other aspects of the plot are not even remotely the same. So it's one of those things where I don't feel that this is a ripoff of I mean, I don't feel that Home Alone is a ripoff of Deadly Games. I think Deadly Games is its own thing, just like Home Alone is. And Deadly Games is a film that is out there. I can see why some people might think it's a little too out there for them because of certain elements that are in the script. I mean, the kid, he's obsessed with action movies. He's definitely a part of a family that is loaded with cash. So he spends his spare time dressing up like Rambo and playing war games with his dog, complete with surround sound speakers with gunfire and all this other stuff where he's got elaborate traps that he sets up for the dog, and he's got his his guns and everything, and he's also a computer whiz who has this computer set up in his lair that is something straight out of Batman. You know, it's that kind of thing where you're like, it's kind of absurd. But because of just how unique everything is, it works. Somehow it works. So you got this kid who's a master whiz kid. He's got all this experience with computers. He's got a gauntlet on his wrist that has a video camera on it. He's got a radar tracker. You know, he's got everything. And he's able to be resourceful enough and strong enough to set up traps and fend off this psycho who's breaking into his house dressed as Santa Claus. But the script has moments where it still shows this kid in sequences where he's vulnerable, which I want to give René Manzor a lot of credit for that, because he easily could have just had the kid be Mr. Know-It-All, has all the answers, always gets the upper hand. But that's not the case here. There are some moments where he gets cornered and he's visibly scared. There are moments where he gets hurt. He gets cut. He gets stabbed by the killer. There's a whole scene where he has to crawl outside on the roof to try to escape from the killer in the middle of a snowstorm. And he's crying and calling out for his mother. Like, there are moments where the writer still allows this kid, despite everything that he's capable of, still be a kid, still be vulnerable in a way that kids are, despite these extreme circumstances and despite everything that he's already overcome throughout the story. I also like the fact that this script does not shy away from having a definite edge to it when it comes to the killer. The killer flat out stabs this kid's dog to death. Like, that's pretty brutal. And that is definitely probably the most brutal kill in the movie, because other than that, the killer doesn't really do a whole lot. It does a few things off screen, cuts the kid up a little bit with a knife, and has some moments where He chases after another kid on a bicycle, but the kid escapes. So there's a lot of stuff where the killer, he doesn't really have, like I said, he doesn't have that big of a body count, but the script still does enough to make this killer intimidating because of just how crazy this guy is and how unpredictable this guy is and how relentless he is, and also by how he's willing to stab a dog in the throat. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you don't get a lot of gore or a lot of creative, inventive kills, but that's not really the kind of film it's trying to be. So I still think it's rather effective, even though it's missing those elements. And the big reason for that is because of how René wrote this character. I like the fact that there's not a lot of character depth with this crazy guy either. I really do. I appreciate that. It makes him more mysterious. It makes him more scary to me. That he's just some psycho, crazy, uh, nut job who was communicating with this kid on a teletel, which is, I think that's what it's called. It's like a early precursor to email, and or instant messaging, and he's communicating with this kid and saying that he's Santa, and he's asking the kid where he lives and all of that, and he wants to visit, and the kid is once again showing more instances of him being naive and vulnerable, in this instance believing in Santa Claus, and he's willing to essentially almost give this guy his address until he eventually is convinced otherwise by a friend of his. And this crazy guy, he decides to apply for a job at this kid's mother's Christmas toy store event. She owns this toy store, and she wants it to be like this epic big Christmas extravaganza. So she's just hiring everyone that she can find to play Santa Claus. And he gets hired to be Santa, but then he's creepy and with this little girl and is being a little too touchy with her and actually lays hands on her when she tries to get him to stop. So then he gets fired, and then he's so out of it that he decides to follow the delivery guy who's going to deliver these presents to the kid's mansion, his home, and dress up as Santa Claus and spray paint his beard white and come in through the chimney with presents to essentially trick the kid into thinking he's Santa so then he can come in and do God knows what. And it works. It's a good spin on a home invasion thriller. The only things that I really have any issues with when it comes to this script are just fairly minor things. There's this whole bit with the toy train with a grenade, and the setup is fine, but there's really not much of a payoff. It happens either off screen or it doesn't happen at all. Uh, and then the demise for the killer Santa is very disappointing. The kid shoots him one time, but there's not really much of a blood squib or anything to really make it leave that much of an impact. And then he eventually overcomes that initial gunshot and is still coming after the kid in the finale of the film, and then he just gets essentially shot off screen by the grandfather. So that was very lackluster and disappointing. I mean, the film did a great job establishing this crazy Santa being a legitimate, intimidating presence and somebody that you really wanted to see get a very satisfying demise, and you don't really get that. So, I mean, even the stuff with the traps, like the stuff in Home Alone was way more violent. I mean, the kid just sends some darts into the guy's neck and earlier trapped him in the same trap door that he used to trap his dog in when he's playing with these war games. So it's one of those things where it's kind of it's you would think that you almost think that there'd be more to it when it comes to the traps, and there isn't. There's that bit with the darts, and he hits the Santa Claus with a slingshot a few times, but that's kind of about it. So that would have been nice too to have seen a little bit more traps, uh, and also really just a more satisfying demise for this evil, crazy psycho Santa, because what you got was just not nearly as good as I think it really could have been. But despite all of that, it's still a nice script. It does a good enough job making you like this kid. Uh, because even despite the fact that this kid is rich and he's loaded and seems to be a little privileged, but he never came across as obnoxious or annoying or anything like Montana Max from Tiny Toons. Yeah, he seemed like a kid that was somebody that, despite all the money and everything, he still had his heart in the right place. And that definitely showed when it comes to the moments between him and his grandfather, which I thought were very sweet. And even the stuff with his mother. And I love the fact that the kid was able to hold his own, and the kid was kind of a badass. I mean, the kid had this badass look to him with the face paint and the bandana and the big gun. Uh, I mean, I think it's pretty awesome. The kid is a fan of Rambo enough that he wants to emulate him. I think that's kind of cool. And the kid even is like working out like he's Rocky. Like the kid, despite the fact that he's just a kid, he's kind of a badass. And that was refreshing. That was fun to see. Like the kid, he wasn't just one of those kids who's like outsmarting the adults and blah blah blah. Like there were some moments where he was flat out showing genuine strength and uh, being more than just your average kid. And I mean, there's a whole scene where he is on the roof and he slides down and he's got to use his upper body strength to get himself back up on the roof. Um, so all that working out paid off. It wasn't just for show. But yeah, I like the way that the script handles the lead Thomas, and as well as the villain, the crazy evil Santa Claus. I mentioned multiple times how well I think the script handled that character. There are a few other characters when it comes to the script that they're take it or leave it kind of characters, but they're handled fine enough. Like Thomas's friend, or the guy who is a coworker who works with Thomas's mother, or Thomas's mother herself. Um, but I would say definitely the strongest dynamic in the script is either between Thomas and his grandfather or Thomas and the killer. So yeah, good script. Only complaints I have are mainly a lot of stuff that happens in the last like 10-15 minutes. I think that some of that could have been a little bit better. So I talked about the film's direction and the quality of its script. Now I want to talk about the quality of its cast. This has a nice cast who deliver good, solid performances. You got Brigitte Fossey, who plays the mother, Julie, who's fine in the little bit that she has in the film. It's nice to see a movie where you have a female character in a position like this who is a straight up girl boss. Like, she's not only the CEO of this toy company, but she also is just completely loaded financially, secure, safe. She has a mansion. She's rising up in the corporate ladder. She's talking about or joking about buying another toy company. It's one of those things where that's refreshing to see. Like, you don't see a lot of that when it comes to a portrayal of a mother in a movie like this. Um, it added another unique little bit of flavor to the film. Then you have Louis Ducreux, who plays Pappy, the grandfather. Really liked that performance. He had a nice little sense of humor about him. Had a decent amount of charisma and personality. Had great chemistry with Patrick Floersheim. Not well, not necessarily. Patrick Floersheim plays the killer. What I meant to say, he had great chemistry with Alain Lalanne, who's credited out as Alain Moussi, who played Thomas. You really did buy that the two of them were genuinely related to one another and had a special relationship. Uh, Speaking of Patrick Floersheim, now I want to give him his shine as the crazy psycho Santa. The guy didn't really have, I don't even think he said a single line of dialogue, but the guy was so effective in terms of just having this manic look on his face, his mannerisms, his movements. Like, the guy was a legitimately intimidating presence. Like, you really did buy that this guy was off his rocker. And a big reason for that is due to the performance by Patrick Floersheim. Alain Lalanne, for a kid actor who I think prior to this hadn't really done a ton of films, there are some moments where the performance is kind of stilted in terms of his his line delivery, and there's moments where he seems like he's a little too over emotive to the point where it's kind of laughable. But most of the time, though, the performance is pretty steady. You do buy that this is a kid who knows his way around a computer. You do buy that this is a kid who can hold his own in the heat of battle, so to speak. And he does have a certain personality all his own too. There is a certain charm to this kid, a certain spunk, a certain um, spark that I think definitely does make this character, as absurd as it is, this character who's a computer whiz kid who also plays Rambo war games for fun and dresses up like an 80s action hero, complete with a mullet. Like, it's the kind of thing where you would honestly believe at first that this there's no way that this is going to work. But Thomas is a character that works because of Alain Lalanne's uh, uh, ability to make this absurd character come to life in a way that still feels genuine, despite how over the top this character is. And then you have a few other actors and actresses, like you have Francis Eric Gendron, who plays a character named Roland. I believe he's the one that's either dating Julie or is a coworker of hers. You have Stefan Legros, who plays Pilou, the friend of Thomas, who gets chased by the Santa while he's trying to ride away on a bike at one point in the movie. He's also one of the people that gets the message from Thomas to get help when Thomas is trying to get a hold of people to potentially save him and his grandfather from this crazy Santa. But yeah, good cast, solid, fine. Really the main performers that really needed to deliver were just three actors. The kid who's playing Thomas, the actor who's playing the grandfather, and the actor who's playing the crazy Santa, and all three of them did equally as good jobs. So yeah, I think overall it's a good cast. When it comes to this film, there are other things that are definitely worth talking about. One of them is definitely the cinematography by Michel Gaffier. Just a really nice looking film in terms of the visuals, the lighting, and just the way everything looks. Like the mansion outside in the snow with the moonlight shining down on it. Looks like something you would see inside a snow globe. Like, it's got that sort of vibe to it and that feel. The sequences involving the crazy Santa Claus, they genuinely have a weight to them. They really do feel like they're full of tension, and a big part of that is because of the way that they're shot and the way that these sequences are ultimately handled. Same thing goes for the scenes where Thomas is getting ready. He's gearing up and getting ready for war. Those sequences were also really well shot. Or the scenes that showcase the film's just absolutely gorgeous art direction and production design, like the scenes inside of the hidden, massive giant room where apparently Thomas's father hid all of these old toys of his. That even has like a giant mock-up of a World War II era plane that Thomas sleeps in. I thought that was definitely different and striking. And there's just a lot of stuff about the film when it comes to the production and art design that's striking. I mean, there's a whole scene where Thomas is running through what looks like this sort of labyrinth kind of maze. And he's trying to escape and stay one step ahead of the crazy Santa Claus. And you see from a top perspective when the camera is pointing downwards while he's running through this maze, that he's running on a floor that has this painting of somebody just staring upwards. And just the way that that whole scene is set up visually with the cinematographer and the director, it's just amazing. It's a really awesome looking shot. So yeah, cinematography is top of the line. Michel Gaffier deserves all the credit in the world for that. It also has some nice editing by Christine Pansu, especially in these moments where the Santa is stalking the kid, trying to catch him, or the moments when the kid is getting an upper hand and setting up traps for Santa, or the scenes that are straight out of like any other 80s movie in terms of the way that they're structured, with a montage of the kid getting ready and gearing up and putting on the face paint and the bandana and so on, and getting it and preparing all of his weapons. Those scenes are also really well edited. Overall, it's a very technically impressive film on numerous levels, from the direction to the cinematography to the editing, and also the music by Jean Felix Lalanne. I love the score for this. This score was really quite something else. I thought this was a stellar score. It fit the film really well. The film has this very surreal vibe to it, and the script also echoed that. I mean, the script echoed that, but so did this. So did the score. The score, in particular, really did echo that uh, um, vibe that the film was definitely trying to go for. And there's some nice mix of guitar as well as instrumentals and synth beats, and there's even a nice instrumental version of the Bonnie Tyler song "Merry Christmas," which I thought was nice to hear. Speaking of that song, that's a really good song. Bonnie Tyler's a great singer, and it was really cool to hear her do a song for this movie, even though the lyrics kind of don't necessarily match up with the Christmas spirit, because they're kind of somber and sad, but it was still a good song by Bonnie Tyler. And I think a good reason for it is probably because of the work by Jean Felix Alain, because the Merry Christmas song was clearly something that was structured around that instrumental that was used as the lullaby, so to speak, that played on the toy train at some point in the movie. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it, except, I mean, it is a film that also goes by at a pretty good pace. It's not that long. Like, it's only 92 minutes, and that's with the end credits. So it's not a film that's really going to drag that much. It doesn't take that long to really get going. even in some of the slower parts at the beginning, there's still enough to keep you interested with Thomas and his war games and all of his various different tech and toys, and the killer showing his sinister, just twisted side gradually, uh, early on in the film until he ultimately snaps. I mean, there's that whole scene where he's just deciding to just butt in a game of snowballs with these kids who are having a snowball fight, and he decides to just butt in and start firing snowballs at these kids, like an absolute weirdo. And right off the bat, you're like, "There's something off about this guy." And then he's going and having this conversation with this kid through this messaging system, and acting like he's Santa Claus. And then he gets the job at the toy store, and then he's touching this girl, and then you're like, okay, this guy is a creep. And then he takes it the extra step and snaps and thinks he's Santa Claus and tries to go after this kid and makes his life a living hell. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, there's some slow parts initially, but I never really felt that it was boring. There was still enough going on that, yeah, I was intrigued by it. And then once he went full on crazy Santa mode and went after this kid, and the kid decided to go Rambo McAllister on his ass, then it was a really fun watch. So, yeah, definitely a movie that I would recommend, especially around the holidays. And as always, thanks for watching my review. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.